Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Roll-Wise podcast, the show where we talk about things related to tabletop RPGs. Today, we are going to be talking we're going to be reflecting on, is probably the better way to put it, our recent playthrough on Cthulhu Confidential, the one-on-one game from Pelgrane Press. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a nice departure from what we had played on stream recently, I think, in terms of the type of style of game that it was, as well as just it was interesting to play a game that was designed for one GM and one player. So Brent was our player obviously throughout, and if you guys want to catch our stream and everything, that you can catch it in our playlists. And Jeff, he listened to the streams, but he wasn't able to participate in that particular one. So,
Well, I mean, it is a solo game, so it would have been weird if he was participating in
a
that game.
duo game might be the.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have been playing Cthulhu Confidential.
Something else would have been played had I not been.
We would have been playing something else if Jeff would have been able to join us and all those kind of things.
But he can be an observer, and in this case, and give us observer feedback.
So I think that the probably the number one point about this is that the Cthulhu Confidential uses the Trail of Cthulhu system, also by Pelgrane Press, but severely stripped down so that it's effective for one-on-one play.
Is it Trail of Cthulhu or Gumshoe?
I thought it was Trail of Cthulhu. I think it's Trail of Cthulhu. If anybody, if you want to look while I'm giving the rest of this, I'll continue. But it kind of explains in detail like how to do one-on-one gaming, which is kind of nice, especially if you're using this as a kind of a gateway game to learn role playing and all those kind of things, and you have a specific desire to play a Call of Cthulhu-esque investigative game that's hard-boiled and all those kind of things. It does have a very small set of mechanics, usually in the form of, you have investigative abilities that you can automatically succeed with, so if you say, if you could narratively say, I look for clues related to his whereabouts at this, and that's kind of you doing forensics, or if you're not sure what you should do, but you want to use an investigation skill, you can kind of prompt responses from the game master by say, I use my forensic analysis to search the room and all those kind of things. And so it kind of caters to a few different styles of play. There are some roles associated with the game in the form of challenges, which were pretty easy. Usually a challenge was a set difficulty number, and you got an advantage, which gave you something cool called an edge, which was usually a benefit that you could use later in play in certain circumstances. You had a hold, which was kind of a middle result. You succeeded, but nothing really bad happened. It was kind of just a ability to advance forward. And then you had a setback, which usually means you gained some sort of problem or something like that. And so, knowing where the advance was and kind of how hard that would be, you roll each of your D6 associated with your statistics, and you kind of just, if you roll a first die and succeed, you get that edge. If you roll again, but you still don't make it, you can actually take on a problem that you don't know what it's going to be, and you can try to make it with that third dice and see what happens, which could be bad because you could just be inviting a lot of trouble depending on how poorly you roll. So up to you. The game itself, though, was really interesting because it provides 3 different starting adventures. It's my understanding that they've built off of this initial starting 3 adventures. But you have the hard-boiled detective Raymond, which we played in 1930s Los Angeles. So I think that
Dexter Raymond, right?
Dexter Raymond.
Yeah.
What did I say? Raymond Dexter?
You just said Raymond. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But his whole name was Dexter Raymond. I was confused at first because I remember there was an EX in there somewhere.
Yeah, Dexter Raymond. And so you kind of just play as this hard-boiled noir detective. Now, in terms of like the gameplay and everything like that, it's very narrative driven. Like the characters are fairly successful at doing most of the things, and what they've established, and this is what I thought was interesting, was that by using contacts, the character can kind of fill in any gaps they have in their character to make sure that they don't They don't just like run into a brick wall and just can't advance the story in some way. There's usually someone they can reach out to or alternative approach that they can take.
So one thing, it is the gumshoe system, but the gumshoe system is used in Trail of Cthulhu, so we were both kind of right. So it is stripped down from the regular version of gumshoe, though. And so the one thing about
stripped,
well, I mean, gumshoe's pretty complicated. I mean, not it's stripped down for the solo play kind of idea. One thing that was interesting about, I think one thing that the contacts do is, I don't necessarily know if it fills out like skill sets. It just allows you to do something when you don't necessarily know what you're doing or feel lost. Like you can say, I'm going to do this thing and go to this contact and see if I can get some information. Is more how I felt about it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And it's so there's two things that contacts kind of do that I thought were interesting, is that it is supposed to kind of help fill in the gaps so that you have a contact that, does sciencey stuff if you don't do science and all those kind of things. But it also provides some downtime where, you don't have to be like in the intense throes of an investigation kind of thing, where you can just kind of like alleviate some of that pressure, at least as it was described in the book.
And the reason that I say that is because I don't feel like there was one or two contacts that I didn't use at all. And then the other two interactions with the contacts, I don't know if were 100% necessary. I did them because I had the contacts, but I don't necessarily know if I needed to use them.
Yeah.
Like they didn't get me that much further.
So I forgot to put this in the beginning, but spoilers related to the fathomless sleep may be present in this episode. So proceed at your own peril.
And we haven't spoiled anything yet, really.
Nope. And I think it depends on your style of play, and it depends on your approach too. You may find that sometimes a contact, you can solve the mystery without using those contacts, or they could add additional information that may or may not be helpful. Those kind of things were also possible. What else was worth mentioning? I think it was worth mentioning that you don't tend to die in this game, because it's, as a hard-boiled detective, you're not supposed to die until, kind of off camera after the case is solved or something, or at least at the very end, knowing like what was supposed to happen. So there is a sense of like you're kind of, it's kind of pulpy in that fashion, that you kind of just get beat up really bad.
Yeah, your character feel threatened. Like there's times that my character felt threatened, but I don't think threatened to death was necessarily. But threatened to be injured
was a common thing. But of course, there is always the Cthulhu mythos that is kind of underneath it all. So that could easily
the stress was constantly worried about picking up other like bad traits of being like more broke or
possibly paranormally shocked,
addicted to something. I really wasn't fond of picking up new negative traits. What is that? What were they called exactly?
They're
conditions.
Called
problems, conditions.
Yeah, problems. So you pick up problems.
Like you're more broke. That was fun.
Yeah, you're broke, but you're now doubly broke, and you own a bookie a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it was broken and debt was the two that I had.
Yeah, you just really were buying into that. So, so I think that the game, since I talked a little bit there, I'm gonna let Brent talk a little bit about like. So, what did you like about the game? Like, how did the gameplay feel to you? What were some of the exciting things that you had?
The narrative stuff was good. I was really interested after the game to find out how like the game is designed into a series. Like you said, it was like a series of scenes that you can do in more of like a flow chart. I was interested because that's kind of how I usually design scenarios when I write them, is a series of scenes connected through various like arrows and flow charts and stuff like that. So that was interesting. But as far as playing in the game, it was fun. I didn't feel railroaded, which was interesting, because it could very easily be kind of railroady in a solo game like that. Like you said, you were constantly worried about like being the one who talks all the time, about just telling the story. And I never felt like there was a threat of that. And I think when you're doing a game alone, there's always those moments where you're going to need some sort of input from the GM, in my opinion. What I struggled in the game really a lot with the dice mechanic, and like I couldn't ever tell from a gamey standpoint. Like for me, it was hard because from a gamey standpoint, it's like, do I lean into the trying to get, like, do I lean into it and not care about getting new problems, or do I play conservative and try to play safe? Like I didn't know. I didn't feel like there was a direction on what the game expected of you, because like there are games where it's like when we played Vaesen, right? Like Vaesen is basically like you should lean into re-rolling, like you should lean into gaining stress and re-rolling. Like you should do that if you're not doing well, because the rolls are important. So you really should kind of lean into that. And I didn't know, I couldn't really tell if that was something that happened that I should do in this game or not. So I played safe a lot, and I just don't know if that made it as interesting as if I would have leaned into, oh no, I'll take another problem. And I also don't know if it didn't feel valuable to me to do that. Like we had one discussion during the game where it was like, so if I try to take on another problem and I fail, I still get 2 problems and I still fail. Like it's like this doesn't seem like a smart trade-off mechanically for the game.
That wasn't win-win for you?
No, it did not sound win-win for me at all.
Okay.
And I like I don't necessarily I don't understand what they expect of the mechanic, because at some point a player's gonna be like, oh, my life sucks now because I'm bad. I'm so down a rabbit hole. And I don't know if that, and I don't know if I kind of think that's supposed to be how it is. I kind of think your character's supposed to like gather problems. Is kind of how I kind of felt of it, but I just don't. I didn't feel like that was. I wasn't comfortable with that as far as a character. Like I'm not just gonna like my character. I don't feel like your character's intentionally gonna be like rack up a bunch of like debt and problems and addictions and stuff like that if they can avoid it.
Yeah.
Well, so that was the one disconnect for me, was the dice mechanics sort of in that sense. But other than that, I felt like it was pretty narrative, and you only do it on important things like roll the dice. But I just had a hard time seeing the value of being like, especially in an instance where you're like, oh, the number's really high. It's like, well, I'm probably not going to get that even if I roll 3 dice. Like,
sure.
So,
well, and I think that you bring up an interesting point, because I feel like I do feel like being risky is what they would hopefully want you to do. You know, they'd want you to kind of do that, because either A, you succeed and it's interesting, or B, you fail and it's even more interesting than just failing, right? And whether or not that's a good design choice is a different conversation and all. But I think that there is commentary that can be said about creating this, kind of generating this interest through adding complications to your character, and that's in the form of these problems. That if you're playing the game long term, you do then have to start solving these problems through actions that you take. Like that, for example, the one, spoiler alert, the action you had was in debt or whatever it was, or broke, and then you went and found the blackmail material, brought it back to the actress, and were able to alleviate the problem, right? So there was there were in the scenario provided avenues for you to resolve some problems, and there are of course probably creative ways that aren't described in there, which you could potentially resolve a problem that may have come up.
I felt like if I really tried to be risky and I just started collecting things that turned my character into a broken mess, like I feel like you would easily lose the plot of the main story. Like if your character gets progressively more broken, it's like, oh, I need to go do this other thing and not solve the mystery, is where I felt like it could easily go.
Sure.
Maybe not in this case, because we were like, maybe I shouldn't think about that because it's a solo game, but like I could see I felt like collecting things that made my character broken would just be a distraction from what we were trying to do. Because like the reason that I didn't do my character, didn't make the choice to return the blackmail material to alleviate that debt, he did it because he thought it was the right thing. Whereas if he was trying to just alleviate the debt, he's like, oh well, I gotta get a different job, or I gotta go sell something or something, you know, where like, so like the game, like the game changes focus like the more broken they get. And so I just wasn't sure about that, like mechanically.
Yeah, and it could be that, it helps kind of put that feeling of helplessness and dread, that kind of like in the form of like a mundane basis for it,
Mhm.
so that when you get to existential things, it becomes even more depressing.
Well,
But
and there was one session where I was like, I'm just gonna lean into it. I'm just gonna, if a roll comes up, I'm just gonna do it. And then it was like we were talking about it, and I was like, wait a minute. So there's it doesn't feel like there's any advantage really to me doing this.
the advantage is you possibly could succeed. That's the advantage.
Right, but
Possibly.
I can't remember which one it was, but like I had already rolled low enough. Like I had rolled so low that like
That you would need
taking
a 6
that I would have needed a 6. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's not going to happen on this last dice. So it's like, I'm not going to take the extra complication for that. And so like, yeah. So the dice mechanics, the actual like gaminess of it was a bit weird for me. Like, it wasn't bad. It was just one of those things where I couldn't as often think of an advantage to taking to taking the gamble.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I did
fair.
once, and well, yeah, I did once on the and
And
I
you
think I
failed.
succeed. Did I fail or did I succeed but still got the problem? Because I
Well,
didn't
you
get
still got
two.
the problem no matter what. I'd have to double check. I thought you failed on that one, which was why it was funny. But I could be misremembering on that one.
Well, right, but I didn't get 2 problems from failing. So maybe I didn't re-roll. No, I might not have re-rolled. I might just been like, oh, I'll just take the problem for failing. Is what I think happened.
That's fair. So yeah. So I think that but it does provide, like I said, it as the singular character, you have to decide how many problems you want to possibly balance in the game too. Having and there were problems offered a lot in the game. So like if you like, for example, if you meet one of the, like, you have a chance right out of the gate when a dame walks into your office, kind of thing, where if you fail that roll, you basically are smitten by the by one of the female characters in this, and so now you gain a problem, in
Which
love
is very
with
common. Like,
yeah, a very common trope for the era, but maybe not necessarily a facet of gameplay that some people want to explore, because then they're like, oh, I'm going to go try to seduce the game master.
I'm always trying to seduce the game master. I don't know what you're talking about.
People should watch the streams to see how that plays out.
Brent's a bard at heart.
It's insidious. My insidiousness is slow, but ever present.
Yeah. And so I think, but those are some good points. I actually, I think that I like how they struck the theme with it, in terms of like the hard boiled noir. Like I think I'm more secondhand aware of how noir should play than necessarily like steeped in it through either watching films or books.
I'm not either.
But like, it felt like they gave you a good primer as to how you should play the game, which was really nice, and gave you a good setting thing. The one thing I thought was interesting, and I actually toned this back, and I don't know if that should have been done, but at the beginning of the adventure, they hit you with like a lot of information that you just kind of like dump onto the player. I kind of paraphrased it to make it more palatable, but I feel like anytime the DM reads something to a player for more than like 5-7 minutes, that you're pretty much like, the player's like,
5 or 7
what?
minutes.
Yeah, I would
is
say
an
that.
info dump.
I'm
Holy
glad
cow.
you didn't do that.
Wow.
Because that would have been bad.
Well, like, I mean, it's a multi-paragraph thing that they're like basically saying you should read. And I mean, if I was truly wanting you to do it, I would have just had you read it before you got there, or had you read it at the table. Like, I just said, before we play, I need you to read this, so you kind of like put yourself in the mood of the 1930s LA,
Right.
because it was so much talking that I'd been like, I drinking water, dry throat kind of thing. And I was like, that's a lot. And I know that, like, listening to it, especially since we're not playing in person, like, I mean, we're all conditioned by video calls. We've been like, oh, I mean, you can try to make something as interesting as
it's got to be kind of
can.
snappy. It can't just be really long. It's got to be kind of snappy and engaging.
It's got to be real. I mean, I don't mind providing a ton of information and then having a player have to like sift. But yeah, there's a limit, like on
and I think reading
ability
it
to pay attention.
And I think reading it from like reading it to an audience is even harder than. So I think paraphrasing was probably the right.
Yeah.
I didn't feel ignorant of the setting at any point. So
yeah. Well, and that's good though, because
I mean, I felt ignorant, but it definitely wasn't ignorant of the setting. It was just my normal investigative ignorance.
but that's honestly, but that's
I'm
good
not a
though, because
professional investigator.
the balance that has to be struck there is pretty hard, because I mean, as the one, as you said, the one of the complaints that I could see easily falling into in this is that me as the game master, is going to be speaking 75% of the time if I'm not careful, and then the player, I'm just playing by myself, being like, okay, now you roll, an ability dice here. Okay, what'd you get? Okay, now here's what happens. Like, then you as
Right.
the player is like, I've only played 5% of the game here. Like, what is going on?
Well, yeah, it's definitely tough in a solo game because of that. Because like the GM does carry, and it's really easy to get more railroady too. Because like, yeah, you just have to be careful of that. I think the game. I will say one thing I wanted to add really quick is I really did enjoy the ending. Like how I got the flaws at the end. That just seemed perfect. Like it was just like, oh, those are perfect flaws for ending the game. And where my character was like reading the newspaper and like just like, eh.
So, but I think, but there were some cool things about that. I mean, in terms of, and I think we can talk about the meat in just a moment, like how, because you had mentioned the plotting and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I thought was really neat is that at the end of it, you get to tell the outro effectively for how the detective goes. In case you never play with this detective or anything like that, but you get to wrap up the story.
Right,
They
which
get
that
the
was the part
girl.
that was the part that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
And it's like you just kind of like you create the story at the end. You're like, how does Dex or whatever your name is playing into finishing their thing? Are they drinking their cup of coffee with the dame, at a cafe? Are they, you know, are they turning around after telling the dame they could never be together? Like they're too hot, lady. Whatever they say.
Yeah, and you do
I
that
just
based on like the conditions that you've kind of
Yeah,
like
like what
acquired.
problems you have and all of those kind of things. So I thought that was really fun. The one thing I did feel like that was kind of a weird part, and this is actually one of the reasons why I delayed the game, is that like the prep for this for the person that's running the game is not light. Like this is not a game you just kind of wing on the spot. And the reason I say that is because um a if you want to have, like, first of all, you shouldn't feel like the game has to be played a specific way, and I know that some people might feel like if they see a flow chart like this, that that's how the game has to play and that the player is forced to go in a path or something. I mean, you shouldn't feel that way, but unfortunately what that means is that you have to kind of be able to react to how the player approaches this. And when they choose a scene, you can't be like, oh, I didn't prepare that scene.
Right.
Oh
You have to
wow,
be ready in more of a general. Yeah, you have to be
Mhm.
ready in a
that's a
general
lot.
sense because
Yeah.
it's a and like I said, what was interesting because this is how like I kind of think about when I start designing write scenarios myself is it's like a flow chart, but it's not a flow chart because they don't flow on a direct path. They kind of branch out and like.
Well, and there's a lot of different connections. Like
Mhm.
you can start here, go down here, and in some ways, like some people, depending on how they play the game, the game suggested that it could be between 4 and 10 hours. So take
Mhm.
that as
Wow.
you will. But there are people that are going to leave no stone unturned, and they're going to resolve all these kind of side quests, for lack of a better way to put them. Like deal with the actress, deal with the Nazi sympathizers, deal with you know meet with the ladies and have suicidal tendencies for something. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot that could happen that, depending on your playthrough. But there is also a point in which you can kind of go bop, bop, bop and be at the end. Like, if you get the
Right.
right clues.
Which I actually think is cool because I think
Mhm,
that's one of the things about a mystery I think is important is being able to solve it before
mhm.
like solve it early. Like if somebody makes a leap of logic that works, like being able to be like, oh, okay, well that's the end. Good, cool. Like I think that's good. But yeah, I could see how some people wouldn't like that. Yeah.
Well, and then this is the kind of game where how you have those players that like hook on to all the inconsequential shit that you don't plan on actually mattering, and then now you have to make it matter because they decided to go after some fucking rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Like this
Well,
game isn't very good for that kind of stuff.
well,
Like
and I
that
feel
lead.
like it kind of encouraged that to some degree because like when I took the things that I took to the scientists to like examine them, like I didn't need to do that at all. Like I felt like that was fairly pointless. Like I don't like the interaction was cool. I enjoyed the interaction with the NPC. I liked her, but like I don't feel like I got any pertinent information really from that at all. And that partially might be because I was asking the wrong questions. But like I think you could do that fine without that.
Yeah, you could. And there were definitely some NPC interactions that were deemed more optional than not. So, but needless to say, am I going to play this game again? Yeah, I think so. I think that the game, I'm going to play it with the wife and see how she enjoys the second of the scenarios. But what about you guys? What do you
Here's
think?
my question for the two of you as far as solo role playing games.
Hmm.
Why do you feel it's necessary to have a solo role playing game? Something designed to be played solo? Because I think our game of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which we wound up just playing with you,
Hmm.
which is not a solo role playing game, I think it went fine.
Hmm.
So, do you feel that games that are, or not, I guess, duo game, a game master and player,
and a single
yeah,
player.
do you
Okay.
think though? Do you think that sort of specific thing is necessary?
I guess I can see a place for it, but I don't understand if you have one player, I don't understand how you can't have two or three or four. Like you're playing a detective, right? Which is kind of a private eyes, especially the noir ones, tended to work alone, but sometimes they had assistants or there was a cop that helped them
Yeah.
or a friend or like I think you could expand to be bigger and role playing for me is more of a social game. I
Mhm.
did when I was laid up, I did look at some actual solo stuff, and so I can see a need for solo, but like one GM, one player, I don't know, like because I watched you guys play, I watched some of it, um, and it's an interesting interaction, when
Hmm.
there's just one person making decisions, and I was impressed that you stayed on track as much as you did.
I think
I
I think
I
truthfully, if
felt
it
like
was
I'd have gotten
off
into the
stream, we probably
weeds.
would have been far worse.
Okay,
No, I think it would have been this. I think we would have been the same. I was pretty focused on. I'm not good at mysteries, so it requires a bit of focus for me not to be like,
Hmm.
okay,
oh, shiny rock, and do something else. Like
sure.
I'm gonna go or be silly and be like, I'm gonna go break into the house and wander around. You know, but that's really my question. Is like the role playing experience is like if you're, and maybe this is on the GM a little bit. But I feel like games, I don't feel like you need, well, or me, because like I said, the All Flesh Must Be Eaten game was just the two of us. And that game isn't significantly designed for
Hmm.
one on one. And so I don't know if I feel like if it's necessary because I feel like you could modify any game with the amount of players that you
Sure.
want.
Well, I think so. Personally, this is my thoughts here. Is it nice that they made it so that it was an easy one-on-one kind of scenario where that's because it allowed them to first of all have design principles associated with how would you play a game with just one player and one person, and how would you have a rule set tuned for that play style. It takes certain assumptions. Like I said, you don't die when you get into most situations unless it's just like they jump off an Empire State Building. Like, well, okay, well, sorry. But this allows them to make certain assumptions for how the play style is going to be, and allows you to kind of like focus on other components to it. Which in this game, the selling point is like, well, when you have challenges, this is how the challenge is designed for a one person playing through the game, which I don't think the challenge system would do I don't think it would survive a two person, three person kind of thing as well. Unless like, I mean, you'd have to rework how that played, right? because it's more designed for that one-on-one. But I think that the root of how a story is told between one person and one one GM and one player, I mean, I don't feel like there was anything that the game did that was like that enhanced the story per se, in my opinion, that couldn't be done with other games. Because first of all, like if you look at other games like D&D, you can play D&D with a duet. You just have to understand that if you as the DM try to balance an encounter for one player, you're being stupid. Don't have balanced encounter for one player. Have the player be one of those quick thinking individuals that isn't just going to like, Conan the barbarian their way through a horde of goblins, or something like that. They're going to have to be clever. They're going to have to be thinking differently. They're going to have to be, looking at alternative solutions. And I think, but I mean, that's 5th edition. You could do that with literally any game that you play.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point. I think,
Mhm.
I guess I would say the advantage of this is if you want to run a pre-written adventure for solo, that's what this is good for, is they wrote it to be a solo adventure. Whereas like if you try and run a pre-written adventure as a solo adventure for other games, you might run into a problem because they're not going to assume it's a solo player.
Mhm.
I just think it's interesting that they wrote these niche games. Like there's Knights Black Agents game, like Pelgrane. I don't know. Pelgrane might be the only company that's put out solo games that I'm aware of. This
Duet games.
game, yeah, Duet games. Cthulhu Confidential. They have a Knights Black Agents version.
Mhm.
And those are both Pelgranes, and those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. And it's just interesting to me that they made these niche games of like duet games, whereas like I always felt like if you really want to play a duet game, like I think you can do that with any rule set. So I was just kind of curious as to
Mhm.
how necessary you think they are. But the fact that they're written for you is one thing that's
It's a
Yeah.
benefit because
Yeah.
you as the GM have I mean, other than the prep you have to do to run the adventure, I mean, it's all considered from a one person perspective.
Mhm.
But I think, but again, I really feel like this is it. Does this have a place? Sure. Once I get done with
Yeah.
these 3 adventures, will we continue the adventures of Dexter, Raymond, Brent, and I at a later point? Maybe. I mean, there are some other adventures that I think it branches off into, like actual published stuff. But would I specifically choose Trail of Cthulhu to be like my game of choice to run one-on-one adventures? I don't know. Like if it was just me and the wife and we had no other way to play games for a while, I mean, I mean, if she was down, I'd play any game, like I wouldn't be like, oh, we only have one player. We have to play a 1v1.
Right.
Right, and that's more what I mean. Like it was just interesting for me that we went from playing All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which is a regular role playing game, and I felt like
Mhm.
what we did on stream worked really well, and then we went to this specific game which worked like it didn't feel that much different. I guess is what I'm
Mhm.
saying. It didn't feel. I
Sure.
didn't feel any more special in running that solo game than I think I helped you feel in the All Flesh Must Be Eaten game. Do you disagree?
Well, I think what you would probably find is that these are game of low crunch. All Flesh Must Be Eaten and this were really fairly low crunch in the grand scheme of things. I think the crunchier the game, the more different it would feel. Because
I guess, and that's partially on me too, because the games I guess I don't play a whole lot of crunchy games. Like I think
not
like
GURPS
Delta Grill,
anymore.
like I think yeah, not groups. Our GURPS solo game. Well, that would be fine though, because you could just make a character that's absolutely broken. But I can do everything. But like Delta Green, I think is a game that you could run as a
Mhm.
duo game, duet game, pretty easy. Um, Unknown Armies is the same sort of way. You could do
Yeah.
a duet game kind of easy. So
But I think those are the more narrative. But I think that's
exactly,
narrative
they're more
focused.
narrative games, exactly. And I guess that's my perspective, because I don't play that many like hyper crunchy games anymore, or I
Yeah.
that often. So it's just one of those things where I was trying to think of, is it necessary? Sure, I guess.
Well, I mean, it was a fun game, and the
It
effort
was
that they
fun.
put
It
into
was
it
fun.
to make.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it wasn't fun. That's not what I'm. Don't
I feel
please
like
don't
all you're
take it that
saying is
way.
screw you guys, Pelgrane. Like,
What the hell are you making this shit for? No, that's not my point. My point is when you have a niche like a hobby like role playing, um, isn't necessary to make something more niche, which is like it's not just a role-playing game, it's now specifically a role-playing game for just 2 people. Whereas I feel like most role-playing games have the flexibility to run a game with less players. I feel like less players aren't a problem, and more players are usually the problem for most games. Whereas like we have a table of 10 people.
Yeah.
No, I'm on the same track you are. I'm glad it exists, but I don't fully understand why. If that makes sense. Not the set, but I mean the specific mechanic of one on. I keep wanting to say one on one. It's not even 1v1 because it shouldn't be versus, right? But 1v1 one player. I'm with you. I don't know. I don't fully understand why it exists, and like I don't think I realized that that's how the game was designed when I was watching you guys play. Now, admittedly, I was laid up and I was sleeping a lot. I was napping. You know what I mean? Like it was hard for me to focus for long periods of time. So you guys may have said it and I just missed it. But
yeah,
it's interesting because I couldn't tell.
Well, and that means that I did my job fine. No, it's kidding.
Oh yeah, way to go, Mike.
You did an excellent job.
Yeah, I'm not back.
I mean, honestly, you did an excellent job because I don't think I'm the best person to run a mystery game with, especially when I'm the only brain working on it.
Well, and that's one other thing that I thought was a little bit tricky about this game. And I will say that because it was so theme park, I'm going to go ahead and put the scenarios as kind of theme park in terms of how I describe them, is that it's a very curated experience in terms of what's planned out. And some people might almost decide that it feels like a choose your own adventure because you as the game master are basically dropping clues that take you to other scenes that you've set up. It's not like a full, okay, well, you're in the city of Los Angeles. Some dame knocks on your door. Okay, now what do you need to do? Okay, and you just have like a million options. Like as a GM, you're kind of dropping a set of clues that give you, like I drop enough clues to basically get the player to go, okay, well, there are 3 real options that seem to have presented themselves real easy from this. The first is I go find this potential boyfriend that what is. The second is I go and figure out where she's spending her time. And the third is I go try to make some money because I'm broke, like right. Basically, like it feels like, like it kind of cleverly points you down these paths in a more obfuscated
way. It feels
way,
like
but
it might be a sandbox without actually being a sandbox.
Correct. Yeah, it's very theme park as opposed to true sandbox. Like you don't have an unlimited amount of freedom.
No, I think it's a good. That's a good analogy.
And so it's good, and the good DM will run it where the player feels like the illusion of agency, which is kind of half the battle as a GM is to mentalist the player into playing the story you want them to play.
Right, exactly. Which is what I always say is it isn't always player agency. Sometimes it's the illusion of player agency that's what you're going for.
They need to feel like they have it's the feeling, right? They have to feel like they have agency, that they can make meaningful choices.
Yes.
But this is the type of adventure, and I don't, did we talk about it on stream or off stream, where this is the situation where you could skip a lot of the details related to the Cthulhu-esque, parts of the game?
Really, I did. There wasn't anything. There wasn't any Eldritch horror really until the end. Like I skipped all of it, other than at the very end.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think that from a game that builds itself as a Cthulhu type game, you had to work hard to get that in there, and so like I tried to drop subtle hints at points, but definitely it wasn't as good as if you took path B instead of path A.
I am still disappointed that when I looked at the doorway with all the like religious symbols carved into it, one of them wasn't like the elder sign that made me go insane. Like I'm a little disappointed that just didn't happen. It was just a bomb right in front of you.
While it would have been funny, I was even going out and improvising the fact that it had all those symbols on the door that wasn't described in the flavor text for the building at all. So you're welcome.
Well, then you did one better than the flavor text, because I think that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was. I am sad now that I didn't include an Elder Sign based on your reaction, but I think that would have been a very odd game. Oh, you look at the door, you go fucking insane. Good job.
Roll a dice. You have a problem. It's called insanity now.
Yeah. A problem.
What did
You have
what
the
did they call
problem.
them in the game?
Did I
They call
did I ever tell you there's a game I played with a friend of mine. It was a Call of Cthulhu game, and I played a
Mhm.
detective. And I found the problem, but we had run afoul of them, and my character he only had one eye, and he got hooked up to like a eldritch kaleidoscope. Basically, it was like a yeah, it like looked up into the sky, and you could see all these eldritch things, and he stops and he goes, "Your character has gained the flaw. Mine torn apart by eldritch forces. It pretty much means your character's unplayable." Like, and that's how I delivered the death of my character. It pretty much means your character's unplayable.
You can play yourself drooling and staring, but that's about all you can do.
Pretty much makes your character unplayable.
But you know, they went out with a bang.
No, it was a bad ending. I did not win that one, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But it was just that's what I always think of, like when I and it's kind of the same thing in this one when I was being assaulted by ghouls. It's like, oh, is my character just going to lose it and not be able to do anything?
And you could have. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a chance that you could have gone insane because that was the point. You know, the ghouls were there, but you know, to the point where there was like, could there have been? But seeing the hard part is knowing when to add eldritch components to the game. When like if you're not getting that from the path that you're taking through the game, then I'd have to improvise it.
Oh, geez.
And that's what, for example, that's what the door was trying to do,
Right.
was to improvise kind of that, like there's some kind of weird
An occult
spiritual
ideal, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, well, but where else would it fit? Like,
Right.
it's, I mean, a cult just can't be everywhere. Like, you can't just be walking down the street and seeing like there's a Shoggoth coffee shop or like.
Oh, I know what
it is LA, but
I know what I'm calling my
if you-
coffee shop.
Yeah, you can if you get the They Live sunglasses.
Yeah. This wasn't the scenario for that.
I know.
But you know,
I
like
can
I
tell.
said, I mean, essentially what your greatest fear was happened. Like I missed everything that was Call of Cthulhu. Like it was just a detective game until the end.
Yeah,
but I
you still
feel like
solved
that.
it.
I think that was good, though. I think it
Yeah.
felt good, even though like I missed that stuff.
Well, and I'm not saying it's bad because truthfully, the story is the story we tell as we play it. Like I can't have a preconceived notion as to what you
Correct.
should experience. Like
Yeah.
whatever people understand, that's what I feel about the game, is that you may, as the GM, feel pressured to make them experience the story, and that I think can be a little bit tricky because when it's one-on-one, you're basically you'll turn it from a theme park into a railroad,
Right.
and that could be really jarring for the player who's just like, well, I didn't really have any agency. You just kind of told me to go from A to Z in this, and it wasn't very fun. And so that's just, I know that's the end of the episode advice, but that was the thing I was trying to say, is that, you know, it's like you didn't get to that. And while I could personally be a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to describe some of those scenes, but that the story was the story we played, so we get to be satisfied with that.
Yeah. The thing I like, though, in hearing both of you talk about the experience, like it feels to me like you guys enjoyed it. Like I thought you were enjoying it as I watched you play. The parts that I remember, anyways, my Swiss cheese memory of that time. But just hearing you guys describe it again, like it seemed like there was some enjoyment of the story and the setting and the system.
Yeah, it was fun. Like I said, there was some mechanical concerns. I wasn't sure like what I should do, but I have that in almost any game. Like the game is part I struggle with. But yeah, no, it was fun. And like I said, I really like the ending, which usually for me is if I really like the ending, even if I had problems before that, it's usually not like the one scene, like I said, the scene that we described at the end where with his new like cold-blooded complication or whatever he had, like where he had that and he had some other stuff, and he just like sitting on the desk like reading the newspaper, like, yeah. Like
how like a
that
local
for me
mob
was
boss goes disappearing.
Yeah, that for me was perfect and like made the whole story worth it. Like that one moment. So I'm pretty easy with stuff like that. But yeah, like I felt like that built up to that just perfectly. Oh, and he was like looking for a new apartment. That's what he was looking for, an actual apartment. Because he lived in
Kind
his
of-
because Dex was living in his office.
You were sleeping on the couch,
yeah.
Mhm.
putting up the close sign, sleeping on the couch,
Yep. Uh-huh.
brushing
He-
your teeth in the coffee pot,
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, he had
spitting
to
out the
let go of
window.
his assistant, and that became his new desk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but needless to say, not rating a game. It was a fun game, and I think
It
that
was
the
fun.
stories are worth playing. Even if
Nice.
you haven't, even if you're, don't know if you'll ever really do a campaign. I think the stories are fun and they're well designed. I mean, the what was the system by Robin D. Laws and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So a person who's been in the RPG world for a hell of a long time. So it's so it's not it's by no mean that's actually a good product. I mean, it's a great product.
it is
Even
a
if
good
we're
product.
questioning like the
And
why
again,
behind it.
you could take the stories and probably make a bigger game out of them. Like
Mhm.
if you wanted to run it with multiple people, you could probably run it with the regular Gumshoe rules or
Mhm.
regular Call of Cthulhu rules or whatever. You just have to make new characters, and you could still follow the same story beats, I think.
Mhm.
Which I think is cool. Like the story is solid. It was a solid story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So with that being said, we hope you guys enjoyed us talking about our experience playing Cthulhu Confidential. It was a fun game to play. I think that I'll obviously have some more experience in the near term when I play through the second scenario there. But we enjoyed it. You should play it. Have fun. It's a good game.
You have a night where people don't show up to your gaming table. It's like you and one other person.
Mhm.
Run Cthulhu, call it Cthulhu Confidential.
Yeah. So give it a try. And we all know that sometimes the scheduling demons get every gaming table messed up a little bit. So this is one of those games. I think it's hard to have in your back pocket, but if you, because it's not a low prep game, so it's like hard to just be like, oh, you could. I mean, if you're that good, you could just wing it, I guess.
But I mean, you could set it up to where, like, if you know people aren't going to show up and you have one person that's interested, you could do this as a filler game for just you and that person or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
So Jeff, how do people contact us again if they want to speak with us outside of the comments?
They search for @Rollwise. I believe it is Blue Sky, Facebook, Threads, Twitter. Did I miss one, Brent?
No, Instagram, all the socials.
Instagram.
All yes, socials.
And if we get on TikTok, Mike will be answering those live. So
he'll also
look
be
forward
dancing.
to that. Yeah, he'll also be dancing. Or you can email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com. We got to get on TikTok before it gets banned in America,
TikTok.
Mike.
Yeah, that's when we get on TikTok and make it big 3 days before it's banned. Who are these guys? Undiscovered talent. And then it cuts and then it's like
Mike
that
dancing and his child laughing at him.
He does have a pretty good laugh.
There you go.
I'm biased though. It's contagious. He just has that innocent laugh for the joy of laughter laugh. Okay, moving on. Okay, well that's it. We're wrapping up the episode.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please subscribe. If you want to see more types of content, please let us know. If you have other comments you want to do, just put it on the comments. We try to respond to as many comments as we can. Obviously, this is a hobby, so we may not be able to get to everybody, but we'll definitely read as many as we can too. So
yeah, I mean, I think we respond to most of them. Whether or not we respond right away is the gap, I think. But as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.